Welcome back, everyone. We have the next minor update, and this is Calling All Clans. Test your might in our next content update. To get things started off, there's 36 new legendary items. I'm going to put these at the end because I'm going to go through as many of them as possible, so I'm just going to leave a timestamp so you can jump there if you're interested in just the legendary items. Otherwise, let's get started with the other content here. First up is some more Hell difficulty player merges. This is just to help consolidate the number of players and finding groups. I actually think this is needed, so happy to see this go in. Hell 1 through 4 is going to be merged. 1 through 5 will then be merged up to 360. 1 through 6 up to 480. 1 through 7 up to 600. 1 through 8 up to 800. So you see this is really different than the merges that have occurred before, where players from 1 through 4 could play together, and then it went to 5. So now we're going to have players from Hell 1 can actually play with all the difficulties, and it looks like there's going to be some tuning and some normalization going on there. Cursed Towers PvE registration deadline change. Now nothing within the towers itself are changing. This is strictly just moving the end period for registering from 3 a.m. on Monday to Sunday at 9 p.m. And they state the reason for that is just they made the change to reduce the pressure players may have felt to attend an awkward start time. That's all we really have for that. Battleground and Rite of Exile change. And again, this is another case where we see changes going into both the Battleground and the Rite of Exile. Really just solidifying what I've said about it before, that they are coded together and they cannot change them separately. Defenders pushing back the idol in Phase 2 of the Battleground and Rite of Exile. The idol's movement speed will be 50% slower. This is a buff to attack. After the recent optimization, I don't know about everybody else's experience, I've gotten a lot of feedback in general that the optimization has not been well received, but on top of that, attack is harder than ever, whether that's due to the optimization changes or just the current meta that involves massive amounts of melee to say. But regardless, this will help the attacking team, and we still obviously need some balance there. Requirement change to unlock gated gear. Gear dropping from activities not tied to Hell difficulties such as Elder Rifts are now unlocked through Challenge Rift progression. Or no longer, excuse me, I paused for a second because I was confused. They're no longer unlocked through Challenge Rift progression. Instead, they're unlocked by defeating the Helliquary bosses who unlock the corresponding Hell difficulty. And this is just a reminder of which bosses unlock which, and this can be seen from the Helliquary raid screen as well. Cursed item update. Again, this is far from the first time at this point, becoming kind of a trend where new systems that go in have things that get changed or amended fairly quickly. I still love to see this anytime it happens. Even if it's not perfect, as I've said before, the fact that they're making a change is great to see, especially when a new system goes in. This means that they're willing to make changes to a system that hasn't been perhaps received as best as possible so far. What we're seeing here are some updated positive properties up top. For example, Blustered will now automatically target the nearest enemy, so it's going to actually target after something similar to the way Howler's Call works as the legendary gem. And you can read through those all, and they're also adding several negative properties. Now, adding negative properties is nice, and this is going to be an overall benefit for players because it means there's going to be more chances of you getting a negative property that you can better take advantage of without it severely affecting your character. So although we still don't have the ability to re-roll them, this is overall going to be a benefit or a buff. Raid group assembly. Players can now convert their party into a raid anywhere in the wilderness. This raid can be brought directly into any activity that requires a raid, bypassing the need to form a raid in the lobby. Sounds like a nice quality life change. However, I think this is more to do with what else is coming in the patch or the update. And there's some notes here that raids in the wilderness can consist up to 8 players, so more than a party of 4, but you cannot engage in activities meant for parties, dungeons, lairs, rifts, and so forth. Earn missed immortal rewards. Players can now earn missed rewards from the weekly celebration of a new immortal raid by completing activities that grant battle points. Now, I believe what this is in reference to is when the cycle changes, and you can talk to the historical archivist. I believe that that is what that's referencing. And if you miss a day, then there's no way to then receive it. So this is going to give you some leeway, I believe, and you'll be able to earn it through battle points once you've missed that original opportunity. Rite of Exile and Accursed Towers spectator mode. Immortals and Shadows can now spectate the Rite of Exile and their own clan's Accursed Towers PvP activities. Awesome. Really like to see that. I know that it's probably fairly common, but my clan, for example, we get on Discord and have somebody do a share screen. This is just an even easier way to do this, so appreciate that going in. Also, not everybody has Discord throughout the game, so it is nice to see that change and allowing that option for players who would be interested without making use of, software that isn't directly related to the game. Customized chat shortcuts should have been in so long ago. I feel like this is ridiculous to even read this at this point. Chat channel has their own set of customizable shortcuts. Many player type messages can be stored. Players can customize messages by using a feather icon. They can also insert shortcuts into an expanded chat preview. I mean, just chat in general is so limited in this game. I feel like the ability to whisper people, similar to other Blizzard games with a /W and then their character name, like a lot of this stuff really should have been in already, in my opinion. Chat channel tabs have been added to the chat window so players can quickly swap between chat channels such as party and clan chat. For players who prefer not to see this, they can still turn this feature off. Predictive chat messages. While communicating through many chat channels, players will have the option to send a predictive chat message. Players can tap on the message to send it, or the X icon to dismiss the suggestion. Again, just some more overall improvements just to kind of help the efficiency of chatting and so forth. Voice chat improvements also going in. You can now easily join voice chat via the party and raid drop-down menu. Voice memo improvements. This isn't a feature that I've used too much. However, I have used it a little bit. We used to use this in parties and so forth if we were on mobile and didn't want to jump on Discord at the same time and so forth. Now we have some limited time events. Trials of the Warrior. Now this is actually some tiered rewards, and you can see the different tiers here. Bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond. Basically, you're going to be doing bounties or elder rifts to earn treasures befitting their valor. The more you do, and you can see one bounty or elder rift will put you into the bronze and you'll get a reward. If you do 50 bounties or 40 elder rifts during the period of this event, you'll get put into this tier. You must log in the week following the event to receive the rewards. That means that once you complete all of these, you will not get them immediately. You have to then log in once the event ends to receive that reward. Hungering Moon, this has been seen several times. I think most people are familiar with that, so I'll just kind of glance over that for now. All clans on deck, limited time event. Again, pushing the clan theme, and the clan theme was something that was being pushed last go around as well. That's why we got things like the instant clan change, which has had some changes made to it. But they want players to be in active clans, and they've been open about saying that. All clans on deck is most likely another event that's hoping to get players into active clans. And with this, we have, again, some tiered rewards. So perhaps this is something they're going to be using fairly regularly in the future. And just some things to note here. You do get some things defeating elite monsters, joining a clan, inviting players to the clan. But also on top of that, in the written description, your clan must track down and dispatch elite enemies together before time runs out. So this means that you'll be able to form possibly these 8-player raids that I mentioned earlier and go around the wilderness with members of your clan, dispatching these creatures and increasing your rewards. If you get over 6,000 elite enemies as a clan, you'll get into the diamond tier. New cosmetic. Personally, I like the look of this. I like that it's a little bit of a muted color as opposed to some of the more flashy ones we've had. And then some bug fixes, which I haven't gone through and read yet as well. So I'm going to grab some water, and then I'm going to get to these legendary items. I would like to go through as many of them that I think are relevant coming up. If you're stopping here, then thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day. Otherwise, I'll see you in a sec. Alright, so here we are at the legendary items, and I just want to make mention that every single class has a developer's note. For Barb, Hammer of the Ancients and Demoralize combine to draw enemies, setting them up to be controlled by Ground Stomp, and subsequently cleave to death. Now this basically means that all the items being added are essentially a loadout, and something that you could just use the 6 new items for each class and have a working build. Do I think in practice that this is actually going to be what we see people use in the game? Most likely not, to be honest. Reason for that is, well, in the case of Barb, for the offhand, Hammer of the Ancients can now be dropped at a targeted location, and when activated again, you and the hammer rush towards each other, gathering any enemies in between. So this is a support type ability. However, being in the offhand slot means you need to drop either Sundered Legacy or Broken Soul, both of which are massive damage boosts to the Barb. So maybe if you go full support in something like a group challenge rift, but I just don't see in practice this really being super beneficial. If you eliminate the offhand from here, then you might kind of drop Hammer of the Ancients out of the build, which then would mean the chest would go, and then you're kind of back to maybe what you had before. The best item in here that I foresee is actually this helmet, Visage of the Living Ancients. Demoralize now calls on the power of an ancient to charge towards you from a targeted location, bringing any enemies in its path to you. Why do I think this is so good? Well, in PvP, this can be used with the current build. The Helm slot is arguably the worst slot that Barbs have in PvP, and just by equipping this helmet would pull things towards you and have them pulled into your fire ore doing massive damage. So I think this item is probably going to see some use in that regard. Do I think that helm will see use in PvE? Most likely not. I still think that the extended duration of, say, sprint when you're farming, or even in group dungeons when you're running group sprint and so forth, are probably going to be a better helm slot for that case. But I think that this helm will see use in PvP. Crusaders, again, we have a note, and I won't go ahead and read them all. One thing I found interesting here is actually these pants. Shield charge now slams your shield into the ground, dealing damage and pulling in nearby enemies. Now, with Condemn, I don't see why we would need this, because this surely is going to have a short cast time, whereas Condemn is instant, which is just going to make Condemn overall better. However, it'd be interesting. Few spinning shield essences as well. Enemies affected by Consecration increases your overall damage. Don't know what the duration of that is, but I'd be curious to see how long that lasts. And another blind going in. Overall, just essentially some CC or some control abilities and essence for Consecration, which they make mention of Consecration melting the enemies, but the only essence we're getting is now covering a small targetable area, but it will automatically seek nearby enemies. So it just sounds like it's going to just travel around similar to Arcane Wind, and if it's a smaller area, I don't know how much melting will do other than on one or two targets at a time. So maybe just some of this wording is funny, but again, I just don't see that going into practice the way it's kind of drawn out there. Demon Hunter. Now we're getting some knockback shot. Knockback shot needs some attention for sure, in my opinion. I don't know if it'll actually work its way into builds for anything, because Demon Hunters just have to give up so much in order to swap different abilities in. Meaning that the skills they do have in their loadout really just feel like staples and irreplaceable. However, knockback shot will cause your primary attack to also fire a blast of wind that knocks enemies away. Now this is kind of the important one, because this is going to allow you to trigger Firestorm with other abilities, whether you're using Flame Spite as the main hand, or the new Rain of Vengeance, where we have on the shoulders here that deploys flaming arrows, burning targets in the area. Also wondering if we're going to be able to get some damage over time components, whether it's from things like Impale that we've seen have essences lately, some of these new ones, and whether they're going to be able to make use of that Banquet set. Demon Hunters already do a decent amount of burst damage, and if they're able to employ the Banquet set, they may be able to have a full glass cannon build. Not that they aren't fragile to begin with, but perhaps they can kind of go in, burn everything on the screen, so to speak, and wipe out multiple opponents before suffering a death themselves. Whereas at the moment, they seem to just kind of trade one for the most part. Monks. Now, what they're trying to do here is allow Flying Dragon to be the opener, allowing for movement and control of your enemy. Once you get them in place with Inner Sanctuary, basically can then use Wave of Light to finish them off. So already Wave of Light is currently finishing enemies off, right? Wave of Light is Shimmer or Shimmerlin, as Shimmerlin is the shoulder essence that turns Wave of Light into that ability that we all probably know it so well as at this point. So the Helm is going to reduce movement speed of enemies and preventing dash skills from being used while within the spear. So this is kind of interesting. We now are restricting the ability of our opponents. Obviously, this is intended for PvP. Don't see many people struggling with mobs that are dashing in PvE. So I think that should be clear that maybe they're trying to contain some of this mobility in PvP. Not sure why, but that just seems like the general idea here. The pants, each time Wave of Light deals damage to an enemy within 2 seconds, its damage against that enemy is increased by 3% up to 30%. Does anybody here think Wave of Light needs a 30% damage buff? This is just an honest question. What you have to sacrifice for this in the current PvP build would be the Mystic Strike that allows you to teleport to a location and knock enemies up. However, I think at the cost of up to 30% damage, at least perhaps in the very least in PvE for something like Challenge Rifts, this will be incredibly massive damage. Flying Dragon creates a massive updraft in a targeted area, knocking enemies in the air. Flying Dragon is activated again after hitting the enemies. You'll teleport to them and deliver a flurry of kicks, dealing damage and stunning them. This is important to note. This is a chest piece, but we also have a shoulder for Imprisoned Fists, which does a similar interaction where it's both a knock-up and a stun. This means that monks are going to have two abilities that both knock up and stun. And why that really matters is because in the Gladiator tree, you can get Uncontrollable, which means that the first ability to affect you goes ignored. In the case of Imprisoned Fist, or now this Noble's Path essence, these abilities are going to eat through that on the knockup and then stun you anyway. So this just adds a ton of control, and it's going to allow monks potentially to run both of those and just completely lock down targets. Some Fists of Thunder, a channeled Wave of Light. I don't see that getting much use in general when you're farming or in PvE. I just think there's better options for the shoulder. Again, this would replace Shimmerlin, so that's just the first one that comes to my mind. You'd have to trade Shimmerlin for this channel. Perhaps if you had a strictly single target fight, like a raid boss, this might see some use. And monks also getting an armor debuff as well. I think overall, and it really just makes me laugh as I'm saying this, I think monks are getting some of the best essences in this update. And of course I find that humorous, given how strong they already are. Necromancers. Wraith form to spread fear among your enemies, following with bone spirits to nuke them. Well, this is kind of what they're already doing. However, they're adding in corpse explosion as well. Now, not all necromancers run a fear on the pants in PvP, but it's a pretty popular setup where they use the proximal fear pants as well as bone spirits just for the sheer damage that it does. Bone spirits damage being buff to feared enemies, that's a big one right there, and the trade-off is not much. You could actually run a popular PvP build and just drop a generator from the chest and essentially put that into action just for bigger damage already. Corpse Lance getting a snare on the head slot. I don't think that'll get a ton of action just because I think there's better helms already. The Bone Spirit's offhand now instantly unleashing many spirits, but no longer consumes energy to maintain the effect. This could also potentially be very good. Now, you won't be able to fear with this because it's the offhand that causes the fear, I believe. I'm sorry, excuse me. It's the offhand that causes the larger drifting skulls. So this would just be another option to kind of shoot some burst damage out real quick, and that may potentially see use. Wraith form now quickly transports you to your target. Deal damage and fear all nearby enemies. Now, don't know, this does say transports you to your target as if it's going to be a selectable target. If so, this will basically just replace the proximal fear pants altogether because it will just be that much better, because not only can you just instantly go there, but you can fear them. However, the original Wraith form with those proximal fear pants may still have some use because Wraith form provides you kind of that security or that invulnerability to certain effects where you can't be hit by somebody's primary attack during this period and so forth. However, for most instances, I think that those pants will replace them, and there may be some select players that continue to use them and so forth. Use the old ones, that is. Wraith form being reduced for every time you are hit. I really like the concept of this. However, on the main hand slot, kind of questionable. Not that Necros have anything great there, to be honest, but main hand I feel like is typically a slot that really boosters something to damage out of your loadout, and it just seems to be out of kind of sync with the other classes, having it go to a mobility type ability. However, that's there, and other thing with Necros, how many times can you really get hit before you're just dead? This will probably be really nice when farming, and that'll probably be the most use that you see that. Corpse Explosion getting a new essence as well. Detonates the fear of targeted enemies, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. So again, this is no longer targeting a corpse. So as I mentioned before, you might be able to run builds where you take out the corpse generator altogether, perhaps replacing the chest piece with increased bone spirits damage, and still getting Corpse Explosion into a build as well without actually needing to generate any physical corpses. Wizard, and the premise for Wizard here is to use slow time and Arcane Torrent while remaining mobile. So previously Arcane Torrent got an ability to be cast while moving, which was kind of a step in the right direction because nobody was using that ability otherwise. Slow time is not used very much either. Now, every now and then you'll see somebody running that. Some people run it in challenge rifts and group play and so forth. The helm here I find pretty interesting out of all of them. Slow time now following you. Be curious to see how big the radius of this is. But that potentially could really help for support play. Could really make a significant difference for wizards in PvP as well, as they kind of maybe become a support class in that regard if they build around that. And that will be interesting to see if you're stopping projectiles and have the ability to make it travel with you. And then we're kind of questioning how long is the duration of this. Are you going to be forced to run 2-piece Vitus and so forth? Also like this chest here, Lightning Nova transfigures you into a ball of pure lightning, allowing you to move at high speed and continually damage to any nearby enemies. So this is basically just going to turn you into a mobile ball of lightning that you travel and run through things. Certainly sounds interesting, perhaps sounds very fun as well. I think those are kind of the most two interesting ones in general. And also really just seems like everything for the wizard is going support-wise in terms of these legendaries. So kind of like to see it because I think the direction of wizard, especially in PvP, is a little bit lost. Wizards are in a great place in PvE, in my opinion. But in PvP, they just kind of seem to be lacking where not really sure if players should be playing support or should they be playing damage, and then it matters which bracket they get placed into in a match. They can either be the carry or they can be the lowest resonance player and so forth. So really like what they did with Wizard here. I don't think it's quite as strong as what the Monk's getting, but overall I think that these are at least interesting to see go into the game as well. As always, guys, thanks for taking the time to watch. Have a great day.